Michael had just tripped over the same hover drone for the third time that morning, and he was beginning to suspect the palace had it out for him personally. "Seriously," he muttered, brushing off sparks from its emergency power pulse. "Do they all have a personal vendetta against humans, or is it just me?" The drone buzzed indignantly, spinning in place like it had just received an existential insult. Michael raised his hands. "Okay, okay, I surrender. You win the obedience contest." Queen Lysira drifted nearby, her long ears arching elegantly behind her. She watched him with that familiar mix of curiosity and mild exasperation humans never seem to earn from royalty. "You know, you're remarkably persistent," she said, her voice calm, melodic, and impossibly patient. Michael nearly fell again, tripping over thin air as the floor adjusted to a microgravity fluctuation. "Persistent?" he asked, straightening himself. "I'd call it specialized chaos management." She tilted her head, ears swishing. Chaos management, how human. Her amusement was quiet, subtle, like a feather brushing across a still pond. Michael grinned, thinking this might be the first time in history a human had been complimented for tripping repeatedly. "Thank you, Your Highness. I accept your compliment in the form of, emergency rations." The palace was unusually still for a morning on Zorinthia. Hovering corridors shimmered under the twin suns, light fracturing across the crystalline walls, giving the impression that the building itself was breathing. Courtiers glided silently, their long ears twitching like antennae in response to whispered conversations. A robotic attendant hovered past, carrying what looked like a platter of floating fruit, and Michael accidentally elbowed it. One pair shot across the hall, ricocheting off a plasma wall with a satisfying plink. "Oops," he muttered. "Gravity's weird today." "Gravity is never weird here," Lysira replied, not even looking up from the map that hovered in front of her. The map flickered with holographic stars, pinpointing trade routes and fleet movements. "It simply follows the rules of quantum probability, which you seem to ignore entirely." Michael gave a sheepish grin. "Ah, yes. I studied quantum physics once. I think I remember bits of it, mostly the parts about coffee and why it's necessary for survival." He leaned against a railing that promptly floated away, leaving him dangling in midair like some unfortunate pendulum. "Okay, maybe I need a refresher." Lysira's ears flicked and she raised an eyebrow. "You are dangerous even when idle. I should be worried, yet somehow I am entertained." Before Michael could respond, the palace alarms began to wail, a high, piercing sound that seemed designed to test the structural integrity of your eardrums. Michael clutched his chest dramatically. "And now I am worried." The courtiers scattered, gliding through escape portals, shrieking about intruders and energy anomalies. Some flailed as they tried to summon personal shields, while others argued over whose holographic robes matched the emergency lighting. One tried to ride a hovering chair to safety and promptly bounced into the ceiling, shrieking. Michael blinked. "Wait, shouldn't someone be, I don't know, defending the queen?" Lysira's expression shifted from mild amusement to quiet urgency. "Apparently," she said, "that is your job." Michael froze. "Mine? Look, I'm very good at diplomacy, moderately good at tea making, and I once stopped a vending machine from exploding. But fighting aliens, that seems aggressive. Standing between me and certain death is not aggressive. It is necessary," she said, her voice perfectly calm. Her long ears swayed in a manner that suggested both irritation and encouragement. Michael swallowed. "Okay, necessary. I can do necessary." He took a deep breath and found himself at the center of the palace's grand hall, surrounded by chaos. Plasma turrets spun on automatic tracks, sending bolts that sizzled through the air with a smell like burnt ozone. Hovering shards of decorative crystal whirled like miniature comets. The first intruder appeared, a hulking mech soldier that looked like a cross between a rhinoceros and a microwave. Michael waved both arms like a conductor attempting to lead an orchestra of panic. "No, no, no, you don't get my queen. Not today, maybe tomorrow. The mech paused, tilted its head, and Michael thought for a terrifying instant it might understand sarcasm. Then it fired, and Michael ducked just in time. His arms flailed in a complicated pattern that, by sheer luck, deflected part of the plasma bolt back into a hovering chandelier. The chandelier spun, releasing sparks that rained harmlessly, except for a very loud plink as it bounced off the floor. Michael rolled and landed, surprisingly upright, like some untrained acrobat of improbable fortune. Lysira's ears twitched in what Michael interpreted as approval. "Remarkable," she murmured. "You are entertaining." Michael looked up, panting and covered in scorch marks. "Entertaining is my specialty. Heroism less so, but I'm working on it." He braced for the next attack, glancing at the chaotic corridors. He noticed one courtier attempting to escape while simultaneously arguing with a floating platter of fruit. "Someone's going to get hurt," he muttered, diving into action. By the time the last mech soldier rounded the corner, Michael had improvised a shield from a decorative plasma vase, a hovering chair, and sheer human stubbornness. The mech stopped, clearly confused. Michael took advantage of the hesitation. "All right, buddy," he said, hands trembling but steady. "You go that way, I'll go this way, and no one explodes. Deal." The mech blinked once, metallically, and retreated, perhaps reconsidering its life choices. Michael stood in the middle of the hall, breathing heavily. Lysira floated next to him, unscathed, her long ears perfectly poised. "You may be the most unconventional guardian I have ever observed," she said, amusement glinting in her eyes. Michael shrugged. "Conventional is boring. Besides, someone had to save the day. Preferably with style, humor, and minimal personal injury." "Indeed," Lysira replied, her ears swaying. "And you did. I am impressed, human." Michael grinned, wiping a smear of soot from his cheek. "Well, Your Highness, I'm full of surprises, and apparently good timing." From somewhere in the palace, a courtier muttered, "I can't believe we all ran, and he actually." But Michael didn't hear the end of it. He was already readying himself for whatever came next. After all, chaos management waits for no one. Michael barely had time to catch his breath before another alarm blared, sounding suspiciously like a chorus of angry quantum microwaves. Seriously, did the palace upgrade the panic system overnight just to annoy me? He yelled, ducking as a volley of plasma pulses skidded across the floor in a sparkling zigzag. Lysira floated beside him, long ears streaming behind her like twin ribbons, flicking to deflect stray energy beams with a precision that made Michael's head spin. "Human," she said, her voice calm but carrying a weight that made even the hovering chandeliers seem to quiver. "The intruders are coordinated. This is no mere raid. They are testing the palace defenses." "Testing?" "Oh, sure," Michael said, spinning a decorative orb in one hand and flinging it at a mech soldier. "Because nothing says scientific analysis like shooting at a poorly dressed human." The orb bounced harmlessly off the mech's armor and ricocheted into a floating vase, knocking it sideways. The vase did a perfect pirouette before landing upright, which Michael took as a personal victory. From the corridors, the courtiers were now scattered like startled holographic birds. One floated backward into a wall, muttering about how they had always hated plasma drills anyway. Another attempted to summon an emergency shield, but accidentally produced a small bubble of anti-gravity goo that lifted them entirely off the floor and into a low-hanging light fixture. "Need a hand?" Michael called, but the courtier glared at him. "I am quite capable, thank you," they hissed, dangling precariously. Michael ducked a beam and muttered, "Capability varies wildly, apparently." A hulking mech soldier came barreling down the hall, claws snapping like magnetic pincers. Michael waved frantically. "Hey, over here. No, wait, not there. Go away." The mech hesitated for a fraction of a second, a dangerous fraction, yet long enough for Michael to shove a floating table between himself and the machine. The table wobbed like it was deciding whether to commit to physics, then toppled, tripping the mech just enough for him to leap onto a hoverdrum and swing himself onto Lysira's side. "You improvise oddly," Lysira said, ears flicking in what could only be described as alien amusement. Michael coughed. "Oddly is my middle name, right after Y, and before oh no." Another mech soldier slid around a corner, clanking in a way that suggested it had been personally insulted by someone's bad hair day. Michael whirled, grabbed a floating platter of fruit, and hurled it at the mech. The mech blinked, if mechs could blink, and the fruit exploded in a harmless puff of energy, coating the floor in sticky, glittering juice. "See, I make things festive," Michael shouted. "Festive is not the priority," Lysira replied, though the twitch of her ears betrayed a flicker of amusement. "Survival might be." A sudden whoosh of air brought a squad of small, insect-like drones, their metallic bodies gleaming with bright warning lights. Michael squinted. "They're cute if you ignore the lasers." He leapt to avoid a beam and ended up tangled in a curtain that had somehow detached from the ceiling. Hanging upside down, he waved at Lysira. "Could use a hand. Or, just move the intruders out of the way." Lysira's ears shifted, looping through a pattern Michael would later describe as majestic battalion. She sent a controlled pulse of energy toward the drones. They spun wildly, colliding with one another and bouncing harmlessly into walls, giving Michael just enough time to disentangle himself and land on his feet, though not without grabbing a floating couch for dramatic flair. He spun, realizing the corridor was still swarming with enemies, plasma bursts, and floating debris. "Okay, note to self," he muttered. "Never say yes to guarding a queen unless you like adrenaline, near-death experiences, and odd smells from scorched decorative plants." A particularly large mech stomped toward them, sparks flying from its armor. Michael picked up a discarded hover drone and pointed it like a blaster. "You don't want any trouble, buddy. Trust me. I'm terrifying." The mech paused, tilted its head, and Michael was certain it was reconsidering its career choices. Then, with a surprising flick, he accidentally triggered the drone's emergency mode. It shot straight into the mech, exploded in a harmless shower of confetti-like sparks, and knocked it backward. Michael stumbled, catching himself on Lysira's arm. "Okay," he said, panting. "Maybe terrifying was an overstatement. Maybe entertaining is more accurate." "Entertaining indeed," Lysira replied, a faint curve of amusement on her lips. "You are human, unpredictable in a way that even I cannot anticipate." Her long ears flicked to deflect another stray bolt, sending it harmlessly into a holographic tapestry of the Empire. The tapestry shimmered, showing an image of the royal fleet in orbit, the stars reflecting in Lysira's eyes. "Unpredictable, yes," Michael exclaimed. "That's my brand. Chaos, charm, questionable tactical decisions, and oh yes, heroism. I think I get the hero part." The palace continued to quake under the assault, but Michael's flailing and improvised defenses created something strange. A rhythm. Plasma blasts were dodged with comical near misses. Robots and drones collided in slapstick mayhem. Even the courtiers peeked out of hiding, their mouths open in disbelief. Here was a human, clumsy and awkward, yet somehow holding the line with Lysira, as if the universe had suddenly realized the value of sheer stubbornness. One of the courtiers whispered, "Did anyone else see that?" He actually." Their sentence trailed off as another intruder robot slammed into a wall, cartoonishly bouncing back. Michael waved cheerfully. "Yep, that's me, still standing, still moderately alive." By the end of the attack, the intruders had retreated, apparently defeated not by lasers, skill, or superior technology, but by human chaos and Lysira's measured precision. Michael collapsed against a floating railing. "Well, I think that's enough heroism for one day. Maybe I'll lie down for a few hours, or until the next alarm goes off." Lysira floated above him, ears twitching, a faint smile on her face. "You are remarkable. Perhaps there is more to humanity than I first believed." Michael grinned, wiping soot from his forehead. "Remarkable, entertaining, slightly chaotic. I'll take it. but next time maybe fewer exploding drones. Next time will be interesting, Lysira replied. We may need you again. Michael looked around at the wrecked hall, scattered fruit, sparks, and slightly singed courtiers. Interesting, yes, I prefer boring. But apparently, boring is not in my contract. Michael sat on the edge of a floating console, still catching his breath from the last wave of intruders. You know, he said, wiping a smear of plasma residue from his cheek, if anyone told me yesterday that my day would involve dodging death lasers and accidentally saving an alien queen, I'd have asked them to check their medications. Lysira floated beside him, her long ears sweeping back and forth like twin pendulums. Your sarcasm is peculiar, she said, yet oddly effective in maintaining morale. Michael grinned. Morale, right. That's exactly what I'm thinking about, morale. Not the fact that we're about to be attacked again. Totally morale. He leapt to his feet as the main alarm blared, a sound somewhere between a wailing banshee and a malfunctioning ion cannon. Oh, I love this sound. Really sets the mood for heroic human panicking. The first of the next intruders arrived. Small, spider-like drones with limbs ending in plasma claws. Michael grabbed a hover drone from the debris and flung it at one, shouting, "Take this, and that, and oops, sorry, did I just decapitate a lamp?" The spider drone staggered, sparks flying, and Michael ducked just in time to avoid a counterattack. Human, you are reckless, Lysira said, twirling in midair to deflect another plasma bolt with the tip of her ear. Yet you survive. I call it style, Michael replied, chaos style. Very in vogue among humans who flirt with death on a daily basis. Or, on Tuesdays. A large mech stomped down the hall, its armor gleaming with polished menace. Michael ducked behind a console and poked his head out. Okay, big guy, here's the deal. I flail, you malfunction, and everyone looks fabulous. Trust me, I've got a system. He ducked again as a pulse skidded across the floor, bouncing harmlessly off a control panel. Lysira arched an eyebrow. System? She asked. Yes, Michael said, rolling onto a hovering chair like a spinning acrobat. See, Step 1, confuse the enemy. Step 2, make them question their life choices. Step 3, survive while looking ridiculously heroic. He swung the chair at the mech, which staggered slightly, confused enough to trip over a floating platter of fruit. See, Step 3 in action. The mech roared, or whatever the mechanical equivalent of a roar is, and advanced. Michael grabbed a stray plasma lance from the wall, holding it awkwardly like a spear. Okay, maybe I need Step 4, pray. Very important in human survival protocol. He jabbed at the mech. The lance arced, sparked, and struck the mech in a non-lethal but effective way, causing it to stumble backward into a floating tapestry of the royal fleet. Lysira twitched her ears in amusement. You are inventive, even when unintentionally so. Unintentionally? That's exactly my style, Michael said, panting. Planned chaos, accidental heroism, works every time, statistically speaking, which is probably not scientifically valid, but it feels right. A sudden flash of blue light illuminated the hall. A squad of insected drones dropped from the ceiling, firing synchronized plasma bolts. Michael yelped, spinning a hover table like a shield. Incoming! Incoming! Eat my furniture! The drones scattered as the table deflected shots, and one even tripped on a floating curtain rod, tumbling helplessly into a corner. You improvise dangerously, Lysira said, eyes gleaming. I prefer adventurously, Michael corrected. Danger implies skill, which I definitely mostly possess. Kind of. He ducked another bolt, grabbed a floating platter of fruit, and launched it at a drone. It hit Legance in panic, only persistence. Persistence, right? That's my specialty, Michael said. And sarcasm. Don't forget sarcasm. It's very effective. He swung himself into a roll, dodging the mech's next strike, and accidentally kicked a hover drone, which spun into the mech's leg, causing it to stumble and fall forward into a pile of decorative crystal shards. Remarkable, Lysira said, landing gracefully next to him. Your unpredictability is astounding. Michael wiped his brow. I prefer strategically chaotic, much more flattering. And slightly safer for the humans and aliens alike. He paused. Well, mostly safer. There was the lamp incident. A hush fell over the hall as the last of the intruders were neutralized. Michael leaned against a console, breathing heavily, watching the Queen adjust her ears with perfect precision. So, we did it. Survived another round. Indeed, Lysira said, tilting her head. You have done more than survive. You have inspired. Michael laughed weakly. Inspired? I call it comic relief with incidental heroism. He flopped onto a floating chair. Though if there's a medal involved, I'd like it in the form of chocolate, please. Very important morale boost. Human, you are extraordinary, Lysira said, smiling faintly. Not merely in courage, but in spirit. Perhaps the court will remember this day. Michael smirked. Oh, they'll remember. Mostly because my antics probably broke half the palace, and also because I'm unforgettable, very much a human specialty. From a corridor a courtier peeked, whispering, I can't believe we all ran, and he actually. Their sentence ended as Michael waved at them with a grin. Yep, still standing, still moderately alive, and somehow still charming. Lysira's ears swayed. You are human. And in that, your value cannot be measured in conventional terms. Michael nodded, brushing sparks off his jacket. Conventional is boring. I prefer chaos, heroics, and occasionally explosions that leave me looking fabulous. He glanced at the debris around him. Well, fabulous enough, I'd say. The Queen floated above him, long ears flicking as if in amusement. Then perhaps you are exactly what this palace needs. Michael raised an eyebrow. Exactly. I'll take it, but only if it comes with emergency chocolate rations. The alarms had barely died down when Michael noticed another wave of intruders advancing, this time moving with coordination that made his stomach twist in a familiar cocktail of panic and excitement. You'd think after the first 3 times they'd get tired, he muttered, picking up a floating console panel as an improvised shield. Nope, they clearly enjoy targeting humans for fun. Lysira drifted beside him, her long ears sweeping elegantly to intercept stray plasma shots. They are relentless, she said, voice smooth, unflinching, though Michael could swear he heard a faint hint of amusement in it. You are relentless as well, remarkably so. Michael swallowed and waved at a group of mechanical soldiers barreling toward them. Relentless is one way to put it. Heroically clumsy is another. Though I prefer the first, it sounds more official. He dodged a plasma strike and accidentally launched a small decorative orb into a drone. The orb bounced off its armor, ricocheting into another drone, causing a domino effect that ended in a shower of harmless sparks. See, Michael said proudly, planned chaos, all in the name of heroism. Your style is unpredictable, Lysira said, her ears flicking in a pattern that suggested approval. Unpredictable may be necessary when no other options remain. Michael grinned, holding up a smashed hover drone. Exactly. And by necessary, you mean chaotic genius, right? I think that's the technical term. He rolled aside just as a mech soldier swung its arm, sending a holographic display spinning across the hall. Oops, did I just damage the royal tactical display, totally strategic. The Queen's ears twitched as she activated a protective energy field around them. Strategic or not, you continue to survive, she said. Which is more than I expected. Michael wiped sweat from his brow. Survival is my middle name. Well, it would be if humans used middle names as much as aliens do. He grabbed a floating chair and swung onto it like a makeshift surfboard, dodging a plasma blast that scorched the floor. Surfing chaos, very therapeutic, recommended for morale. A drone shrieked and collided with another, ricocheting into the wall and exploding in a harmless shower of sparks and glittering fragments. Michael waved his arms. I call that flair. It's very important in human defense tactics. Plus dazzling. Lysira's eyes flicked to him, a faint smile curling her lips. Dazzling indeed. Your methods are unorthodox yet effective. Unorthodox? Ha, that's my brand. Step 1, confuse the enemy. Step 2, confuse yourself. Step 3, survive with style. Step 4, make the queen slightly amused. Step 5, optional fireworks. He ducked another blast, narrowly missing a decorative pillar that spun past him. Step 5 activated. From above, a squad of hovering drones descended in formation, firing rapid energy pulses. Michael snatched a stray orb and hurled it upward. It bounced off a drone, ricocheted to another, then slammed into a hovering platform carrying a courtier, who screamed and clutched a platter of floating fruit. Sorry, heroics happen fast," Michael shouted. The courtier rolled out of the way unharmed and the drones faltered, confused by the humans' improbable timing. "You improvise remarkably," Lysira said, ears twitching in approval. "I have never seen such creativity in defense." Michael grinned. "Creativity, yes, that's it. I call it tactical artistry, very official. I may even patent it someday." He rolled under a laser bolt and stumbled into a small hovering cart of ornamental plants. One plant toppled, spraying a fine mist that made the floor slippery. Perfect. Adds an element of surprise, very important. A massive mech stomped into the hall, its armor gleaming and menacing. Michael froze, then grabbed a floating console and swung it like a club. The mech paused, confused, and Michael seized the moment to grab a nearby chair and leap onto its back. "Hi there. Friendly human here. You might want to reconsider your life choices." Lysira's ears twitched rapidly as she created a shield of energy around them, redirecting bolts fired from the mech to the walls harmlessly. "You are audacious," she said. "Perhaps even fearless." "Fearless-ish," Michael corrected. "Mostly panicking, but I've learned to make it look heroic. It's a skill." He ducked another swipe from the mech's claw, rolling onto the floor and propelling himself backward with a hover drone. Skillful panic, very effective. The queen floated beside him, sending a pulse of energy that caused the mech to stumble. "You adapt quickly," she said. "Perhaps this is what makes humans invaluable." Michael nodded, panting. "Adaptation, that's me. Adaptable, resourceful, spectacularly heroic when accidents happen." Another mech lunged, and he grabbed a floating vase, hurling it with all his might. It collided with the mech, knocking it off balance. See, heroism. Very structured chaos, totally intentional. Lysira's ears twitched again. "Your actions inspire courage, even in those who fled." Michael glanced toward the corridors, where scattered courtiers peeked from hiding. One whispered, he's actually holding them off." Another floated cautiously, still clutching a platter of fruit. "I can't believe it, he's human." Michael waved at them. "Yep, still standing, still mostly alive, and yes, human. The best kind of hero." The battle waged on, with Michael and Lysira moving through the chaos in perfect, chaotic sync. He tripped over a floating cable, swung a decorative orb at a mech's head, and somehow, against all odds, it staggered backward into a wall. Michael landed on a hover platform, raising his arms in mock triumph. Victory? Maybe, possibly. Let's call it a warm-up. "You are extraordinary," Lysira said, hovering beside him, ears flicking with measured admiration. "Not merely in courage, but in spirit. You remind us all of what can be achieved when fear is ignored and action taken." Michael bowed dramatically. "Action, yes, that's my specialty. Well, action, chaos, and occasionally getting lucky while looking fabulous." The intruders began to retreat, stumbling over each other and the debris Michael had created. The courtiers peeked further, mouths open in disbelief. Michael dusted himself off, grinning at the queen. "See, nothing we couldn't handle with style, flair, and a pinch of absurdity." Lysira smiled, ears twitching softly. "You have earned my trust, human, and perhaps even admiration." Michael straightened, chest puffed in pride. "Trust and admiration. That's 2 out of 3 human survival essentials. I'll take it. Now about step 6, coffee." Michael sank onto a floating bench, rubbing his arms and staring at the mess that had once been the grand hall of the Zorinthian palace. Well, he said, brushing off sparks from a decorative console, I'd say that went reasonably well. Slightly catastrophic, mostly heroic, and completely exhausting. Lycera floated beside him, long ears arching gracefully in the zero-gravity air, each flick a silent punctuation to her words. You are resilient, she said. Unpredictable but resilient. That is not a trait I have often observed in our court. Michael grinned. Resilient is my middle name. Well, not literally. I don't have a middle name, but it could have been right after oh no and before why. The courtiers were emerging cautiously from hiding. One hovered near a pile of toppled decorations and muttered, I can't believe he actually did it. Another floated gingerly over shards of crystal, peeking at Michael with wide eyes. He's human. Yep, Michael said, raising a hand dramatically. Human, the species that trips over air, yells at robots, and occasionally saves entire civilizations. Not bad, huh? He patted Lycera on the arm, almost knocking her off balance. And look who survived with me. What a team. Team is an apt word, Lycera said, her ears curling slightly as she inspected the damage around them. You acted not out of desire for recognition, but out of principle. That is rare, remarkable. Michael scratched the back of his head. Principle, right. That's exactly why I did it, purely moral conviction. Definitely not because I was panicking and flailing in a way that seemed heroic. He grinned. Though let's admit, it was very heroic looking. The intruders were gone now, retreating into the void of space from whence they came. Mechs, drones, and plasma shooters littered the hall, mostly incapacitated, some harmlessly spinning in circles. A hovering platter of fruit slowly descended, wobbling like it had witnessed too much. Michael caught it, holding an orange triumphantly. Victory fruit, guaranteed to taste of glory and slightly of sparks. You have earned more than admiration, Lycera said softly, floating close. You have earned trust, and perhaps even a place within the court. Michael blinked. Me, part of the court, but I'm human. I trip over things. I talk to furniture when I'm stressed. You are human, Lycera interrupted, and that is why you are invaluable. You acted when others fled. You protected when others hesitated. That is heroism, not born of arrogance but of courage and conviction. Michael swallowed, realizing for the first time that his panic, his clumsiness, his improvisation, all the things he thought were flaws, had actually mattered. So being me actually helped? He asked, almost incredulous. Indeed, Lycera said, her long ears swaying gently. You remind us all that bravery is measured not by numbers, not by titles, but by willingness to act when no one else will. Michael held up the orange in a mock salute. Well then, here's to being me, hero, human, and apparently indispensable. Who knew? He paused, though I think I deserve some kind of medal or chocolate. Very important morale booster. Lycera's eyes gleamed faintly, a smile tugging at her lips. Perhaps both, she said, and you will have my gratitude. That too is a reward of considerable value. The courtiers began to emerge fully from their hiding places. One hovered forward nervously, holding a charred ceremonial scroll. Your Highness and the human thank you, truly. Michael waved cheerfully. Don't mention it. Just doing my job, accidental heroism included. A small group of repair drones buzzed forward, hovering around Michael and Lycera to clean and restore the hall. Michael tripped over one, sending it spinning. See, he said, pointing. Heroics come with style, flair, and occasional chaos. You have changed, Lycera said softly, her voice carrying more warmth than Michael had expected. Not merely in action, but in perception. You have shown that the simplest, most human instincts, courage, loyalty, humor, can alter the course of events in ways even the most advanced strategy cannot. Michael leaned back, catching his breath. Changed, huh? I feel taller. No, wait, that's just the zero gravity, but metaphorically. Yeah, I think I get it. I really did something important. Yes, Lycera said, floating above him, ears curling in satisfaction. And the memory of this day will linger, not only for me but for all who witnessed it. Your courage is a testament, human, unexpected but enduring. Michael held up his arms. Well then, mission accomplished. Humanity proves itself again, panicking with style, surviving with flair, and making the galaxy slightly more entertained. He paused, looking around at the court, the floating debris, and the queen beside him. And maybe, just maybe, slightly more inspired. The palace was quiet now, the chaos settling into a kind of exhausted harmony. Michael, once just a clumsy envoy, had become something more, a symbol of bravery, a reminder that even the smallest, most unassuming individuals could shape events in extraordinary ways. Lysira adjusted her ears, glancing at him with a faint smile. Human, you are unforgettable. Michael puffed out his chest. Unforgettable, that's the last box on the hero checklist.